years that I've been studying sales professionals worldwide, I can tell you that we all fit into one of 4 buckets. The first bucket is that some of us are competitive. About 40% of sales professionals that I work with, that I see, are competitive. And what I mean by that is that they're average. They close about 1 in 4 qualified pieces of business that are available to them. They hit quota about 65, 67% of the time. And they lose, on average, 50% of their base every 5 years. The next group of sales professionals that I see in the marketplace that I work with are what I call distinctive. Now, these are people that no matter how commoditized their markets are, they tend to close about 1 in 3 pieces of business available to them because they've delivered extraordinary value and they've made themselves or their products and services distinctive in the marketplace. So they're rewarded with that. And they're rewarded also by hitting their targets about 81 to 85% of the time in a given year. Now, they only lose about 30% of their base customers every 5 years. Now, the third group is truly breakthrough. Ozzy, I'm going to put you in this category. About 10% of the sales professionals that I see are truly breakthrough sales performers. Now, interestingly, they close the same number of qualified leads. Their closing ratio still hovers around that 1 in 3, so about 30%. But they hit their targets 100% of the time, and they do so by achieving, on average, 107% of their quota every year. Now, the reason for this is that they only typically lose about 5% of their base every 5 years. And what's interesting when we study why those people leave, it's of no fault of these breakthrough sales performers. They lose business only when their business owners retire, get bought, by someone else, move, or die. Things that are completely out of their control, but only 5%. So their growth comes from protecting that base and fully leveraging their existing clients. So what's the difference? The difference is competitive and distinctive sales professionals go the old school route in protection. They literally hone in on one buyer and try to build a fence around them. Maybe you've heard that expression, building cages, building fences, corralling our customers. And they try to build defenses, or they try to protect their customers from the outside in. A truly breakthrough sales professional works in the opposite direction. They build emotional barriers to change by creating defenses from the inside out. So let's talk about why this happens. When I look at distinctive and competitive sales professionals, what I notice is this. They become complacent. And we call it account complacency. Now, I'm not calling them lazy. What I am saying is that they have lulled themselves into a sense of security by thinking that the person who made that initial sale is the right person to secure that sale. They say to themselves things like this: hey, they made the decision. They're the right one to keep that decision safe. They say, hey, don't worry about passing off leads to other departments. Just focus on your own knitting. Just do your own thing, manage your own targets. They say, hey, I've got a champion, and that champion is the CMO of the company. I don't need anyone else. Right? And there's 3 fundamental impacts that happen when you have that kind of thinking. The first one is there's multiple entry points inside an organization. I mean, what are we, 900 people strong here? Each one of you represents an entry point to a decision maker inside a company. And if you're focused only on trying to guard that one person, protect that one person, you've left yourself vulnerable. It's really akin to triple bolting your front door, but leaving your back door, your windows, and your garage door open. You cannot, as a sales professional in this marketplace, try to block from the outside in, because there's too many entry points. The second problem, or the second impact that we see, is you become myopic. When you're solely focused on a single department or a person inside an organization, you miss all the other opportunities. And those opportunities could be massive. I have a client in Arizona that's a chip manufacturer. They do components manufacturing. And one of the reps said, hey, I'm golden with this account because they call me when they need stuff. I don't have to sell at all. They don't go to bid. They don't go to tender. They just call me and say, hey, we've got a new project. And I said to them, well, what did they do? And they said, well, they use our product to test the marketplace. Well, what happens after the testing? Oh, I don't know. what we discovered is someone else inside the organization was in charge of the production, which was worth 10 to 20 times what the testing was worth in terms of project. And our sales rep had this myopic focus on that one particular decision maker, and over the course of 5 years, we figured had lost out over $100 million worth of business because she wasn't talking to other people. The third thing is, hey, let's face it, buyers churn. Tony, you might want to close your ears on this one. But the average lifespan of a VP of sales inside an organization these days is 13 months. So let's see. You've got a long sales cycle, right? I know you guys are all looking at each other. You've got a long sales cycle. So let's say it's taken you 6 months, maybe even 8 months to sell a particular executive on whatever product set you're selling. That person might only be there for another 5 months. Right? And when that buyer leaves, if you've done nothing to forge existing or new relationships inside that organization, you're out of luck and you're vulnerable. Now I know, some of you are thinking, hey, what about the fourth bucket, right? I started saying there are 4 buckets that all salespeople fall into. The other bucket we're not going to talk about because they're either too new to measure or so bad they're on their way out. So we don't want to talk about what their best practices are or worst practices. But here's the 3 impacts that we need to think about. And what we find with those breakthrough sales reps is that they're really using an account leverage strategy to transform or transition themselves from a single sale into account dominance. And they do that in 3 ways, which we'll talk about. But what they're really focused on doing is building new and existing relationships so they create this internal barrier, this internal defense system against outside penetration. So let's look at those 3 things right now. 1, they focus on building decision-making capacity and decision-making quality. So what I mean by that is this. Decision-making capacity is your width inside an organization. It's you saying, okay, who is affected by our products or potentially affected? Who is using our products or potentially should be using our products? Who has our products in their workflow or could have our products in their workflow? And how do I build out a matrix? The very best tool that you can use for this is a simple organizational chart. Mapping out that organizational chart so you know exactly who inside the organization across both departmentally, but as well internationally should be engaged with you and your team. Decision-making quality is the depth, right? Don't believe anyone who tells you to sell at the top and only at the top. You've got to build bench strength underneath that top decision maker, right? When I was selling to the US Air Force a number of years ago, I built bench strength around all of the US major commands. I walked into General Woodward's office in the Pentagon and said, hey, sir, all 8 major commands want to buy our software. He said, hey, Colleen, the last time I checked, they reported to me. And he was right. But that bench strength helped us to gain favor at the top ranks inside the US Air Force.